To secure this unusually rich demindological sample, the researcher let her hair grow quite long, equipped herself with a supply of black stockings, and floated among the bars in the GGG village. After a week, she sent back the tape, here transcribed with a note that she intended to gather more material, a program which we at the laboratory thought superfluous after hearing her tape. She has not been heard of since. The deminded are teaming up in the US of A, Dad. I mean, they're like all over the scene. Me, I got a low threshold for tolerance for those screaming deminded. Squares from Squaresville don't bug me. They're human too, you know. Or if you're not like human all the way, still they're walking on two legs like everybody else and they got a right. Well, all right. They don't have a right exactly, but there's nothing you can't do about it, so live like it's my slogan, Hogan. So it isn't the squares from Squareville that throw me into my countdown. It's the squares from the Squareville that take it along and bring it down here and try to smother me, Mother. It's my own mad pad. I mean, like, you can't even take the subway without the squares cubbing it up all over the place. You go uptown and you look out the window and the sign says Grand Central. You know what Grand Central is? It's a local depot where the 9 to 5 and still alive contingent grab the bar on their wheels, roll in from the con, and plant their assets in the grass. A man can't breathe, man. You gotta have air. So you have to move to the other side of the tracks and take downtown the tube, Wall Street. I mean, when it comes to cubes, you give the ho hi ho and Miles Van der Rohe ho, and you got the airs. You pay for the fare, and at the end of the ride, where are you? Staten Island, the city of homes. If you're really serious, man, in the search of your identity, sooner or later you're going to want to rattle it up to the Union, theologically, to hear the Paul Lich and Big Reinhold, what they have to say. They are like the Protestants and all that, but with them it's different. No bean suppers and strawberry festivals. It's like all that Satyr and Camus and good old Sorens and Kierkegaardens. Soren himself was a very large Protestant, for the matter, though you'd never know it from Norman St. Peel to Peel. I mean, the best of all will in the world, you turn the style and you make a smile in the mile for the unions, and you have the change trains right at the squarest square of them all, Times Square. All that news, man, that's print to give fits, and plus the stale, fetid atmosphere of commercial theater. It isn't that sad vulgarity, it's the squarity. I don't mind the popcorn places, the neon nickel grabbers and the hand-painted nudes on the neckties. They all have a certain rank of honesty and American flavor, like the horse bit in the barnyard. You can respect it, because it's only itself, sweating away with no deodorant, gone hairy with no dilapidatory, and if some of the sad and sordid shops specialize in blown-up boobies, well, there isn't any real attempt to deceive. It's more like a sad and sorry sort of storts efforts to make the sad and simple dream of man come true. But behind these pretty putrescents sulking silently in the sibilant shame of the Schubert and Schulzbergs, you do leper. That might be like better if I broke the phrase, left out the punctuation, and maybe like put horse bits in capitals, but you can't rewrite it over the cloud, over the simple primal impulse. Coagulates and the flow of direct expressions with bankrupt tricks and craftsmanship. It puts the fingers on lingers and ingers, drawing it to the oblique and the oblique sense of art. But man, the absolute most in the way these squares box us in at the Museum of Modern Art. Not long ago, they had a late afternoon, early kind of evening kind of thing going on, so it was a coterie of up wandering it on up. What they were doing was blowing up scale models out of the Parthenon, St. Peter's in Rome, and the Buckingham Palace at the Washington Monument, and the Metropolitan Museum of Art. It was a gesture of sympathetic interest and philosophic revolution, and it sounded like a good idea to me. In addition to which, it was the #1 pioneering effort in the aesthetics of dynamite. I guess there was something in it for Mussolini's invasion of Ethiopia in the old days, but those guys were all fascists, and it's about as square as you can get unless you're Uncle Ezra, so the Abyssian Abyssmans hardly counts. Up at the museum, on the other hand, the dynamiter and the whole staff of thoroughly non-committed, the artist, under 35, was a Californian who studied in New York and had a Fulbright, a Guggenheim, and a Ford Foundation Bonanza to work up the Big Bang. Well, he's been in Europe and interviewed some of the real-time banquet the bomb throwers of yore. All this was in the catalog with like statements from Hercules Powder Corporation. It was a blast. You get off the subway and it's not so bad. I mean, it's like Lexington Avenue still has a lot of the sweat and hair of the American thing, but then you're crossing Park with only the sweet meisterly of life all over the place. But uptown, as far as the eye can see, the sterile apartments of the very rich, very depressing. And on another block, and you're on, well, all of the places, Madison Avenue. And not only Madison, but Madison at the end of the day. The street is crawling with copywriters, account executives, and heady with the mortuary smell of deodorant. Then, in a climax of impotence, you're on Fifth, the last and the worst. There is an engulfed cathedral with all the phony Gothic on the outside and stuffed model of the Pius the 7th and the 12th in the inside, and Cardinal Torquemada urging the faith to bomb the Translux. There's 100 depraved department stores corrupting the sheened-up frozen woman. There's Rockefeller Center, where the word and the picture go forth on waves of air to hypnotize, oh, America, the spoiled toilers of the deep and even more toilers of the shadow, seduced and deflowered of by electronics, untouched by human hands, woman, man, and child alike. All the victims of the shell game, hard, soft, long, and loud. She shells, everyone tarried with the same pitch, oh my country, and beyond, in the tumulescent twilights of the towers of time, there is the so distant Republicans playing fast and loosey with life, with the fortune and the sacred honor of my old starred, bangled rectum, retching out the thought you stagedly lonely as a crowd thought through the revolving doors into the museum, the last refuge of the honest man, where the woman come and go like Dr. Frankenfurter. That's how it looks with no punctuation at all. I'm still not satisfied, but I refuse to change it. Who wants a commercial success? Well, the big blast was out in the garden, naturally, and we all went. It was a shocker, all right. I'll never been there at the time before. I usually come in through the Whitney, where I pick up somebody's return ticket. The museum in the cool of the evening is quite different from the museum in the heat of the day. In the first place, there's practically nothing there but squares and 3-button black suits. Some of them even have black ties, and they all look like they're ready for Cincinnati Enquirer. They're accompanied by their low-cut bouffant ice cubes, and everybody's belting into the martinis while the mad bomber's having trouble at the stitch. I'm sloping around looking down, powdered backs on deliberate preference to the well-structured mammillary attractions up front. The Washington Monument finally went off like a flaming phallus, and it did. I heard one big space buyer tell another that the gold mine is in this. Before the poor artist had his fuses connected from Buckingham Palace, the space buyers had figured a whole line of exploding architecture, from a schoolhouse for the kiddies to a deluxe landscape at Hyde Park for their own employers. They even scheduled a model of Radio City for people who didn't like television. I left the garden with the Parthenon falling into rubble behind me. There was a polite applause. I walked through the rain all the way back to the pad. As I walked, it occurred to me that it had been all a ghastly mistake, putting the museums up where there were squares. The theory was fine. The theory was the squares would lose their corners. It wasn't working out that way. The squares, the cubes, the polyhedrons were all moving in, appropriating from the suburban jungles the finer things in life. This, I reflected, was even worse than the action painting by number kits that had the Bleecker Street Woolworths in action. It was late when I got back to the pad, and when I got there was Estella lying on the floor, the last few ounces of deep red life pulsing out of her wrists. She was really gone. She'd done it with the old razor, and I hadn't used it in so long I'd forgotten I had it. Trust Estrella to dig up the buried past. She had one good hustler, that girl, and I was sorry to see her go, but you couldn't blame her. All she wanted to do was have a little integrity, just a sliver of honesty in a humble life, and she was denied it. The agency vice president had seen to that. In all her short life, she had never found a bar without a situational comedy or fixed wrestling matches pounding away at her. I knew there'd be questions. I knew I had to find a phone and call up some bureau somewhere, but first I just sat there with Estrella. I got out a bowl of unbleached linen and my old pair of head shears and started my new composition, Estrella Perdetta. I thought of her hunger for integrity and how we all had hunger, and I thought if I just wrote that down on the capital letters, it would look like a telegram and the message would get through. But then I thought I'd have to press down the shift key and lock key, and it would all premeditated and cheap. Olivetta had seen to that.